So right now we're here at the preview, waiting for the movie to start. We're about an hour early. And yeah, we're here to see The Incredibles 2. Hopefully it's good. I hope so. It's Pixar. They never let you down. I am so excited, I'm not even going to bother with the countdown. Let's just get started. The Incredibles 2 is a movie about pragmatic and practical actions to enact idealistic goals. What does that mean? Well, I'm about to get into it. Hello, my name is Gary Medina, and I am here with my just seen review of The Incredibles 2. I just got out of the theater. I rushed home, got everything ready, set up. It's super late right now. But yeah, I wanted to kind of give my thoughts as to what I thought about the movie. As you know, The Incredibles 2 has a lot to live up to due to the popularity of the first Incredibles movie. I can say with confidence that it does live up to the hype. So, what is The Incredibles 2 about? Well, it picks up immediately after the end of the first Incredibles movie, in which they take on the Underminer, the Parr family. They do, and along the way, a billionaire philanthropist, or I'd call him more of a mogul, a tycoon of sorts, recruits them, or really wants to set up a program in which the supers come back to life. And here's where it kind of gets into the pragmatic stuff. Now, I thought it was really interesting when they use the perception of the media and the audience to that media, and it's a very topical take on the whole matter because with fake news and stuff like that, perception is key, and perception is what can turn a hero into a villain just with the change of a lens. And he wants to enact a program in which the supers go out there, save the day, and thus reaffirm the trust from the general public at large in superheroes. And there is a pragmatic reason why Elastigirl is chosen to be the one to lead the charge in this new program, because she is flexible. And I know it's kind of pun intended, but that's in the fact that it's kind of an interesting character thing where Mr. Incredible is super strong, so naturally that makes him a little less cautious towards collateral damage, property damage like that. Whereas Elastigirl, or Helen Parr, is a lot less, I don't want to say blundering, but she doesn't destroy as much property, and she's, literally flexible. Because of that, she has to adapt to a style of fighting crime that is very minimalistic and not affecting to the, property or city at large. So they go to a city, and she stops a railway car, which I assume is magnetically engineered, because it does kind of rise, and it's like the bullet trains in Japan from going backwards. And it was a very exciting scene. Now, what I want to give the movie credit for is definitely the way it builds tension, and I thought that was fantastic. And guys, I'm just going off the cuff, like this is literally like my first thoughts of the movie. I'm still processing everything. Fantastic. Like the cinematography was great, the way the camera moved with all the action, it was fantastic. And the characters themselves, they're very well defined for the most part. I will get into details on that, but what I liked about it was just the tension. Anyway, going on. After she saves the railway car, this is where we get the first mention of the villain, the Screenslaver. Oh boy, okay, did I mention before that there were going to be some spoilers? Spoilers up ahead. There are there's a whole bunch of spoilers up ahead, just letting you know. Immediately when I saw that, I didn't roll my eyes, I didn't groan, but I was like, oh boy, that is right on the nose. Now, it's already kind of messing with the theme of perception of the public at large due to media. So, a very topical take on that. And then you kind of have the Screenslaver, which is, kind of a threat for the millennial age or whatever. And I was kind of like, it's a little on the nose, And so she takes him on, and whenever she does a television interview, she speaks with the ambassador and then the TV host. And that's where we get the first appearance of the Screenslaver. Now, his abilities, initially thought to be a he, is very much using hypnosis to control the population at large. He's able to stun and hypnotize his victims, thus making them comply to his every whim. Now, Elastigirl, she rescues the ambassador whenever he, because he functions on all screens. This is why it's a millennial thing, because we're all stuck on screens. And whenever he gives a speech, it's very much like those edgy, art pieces you see of like people being enslaved to their phone or whatever. I thought that was a little on the nose, in my opinion, but I still went with it because because the pacing was really good. The movie is almost 2 hours long, but the pacing is really brisk, but not in a way where you miss too much. And I'll get into the kind of the B plot in a little bit. I'm just kind of getting the events that move the story along. So, Elastigirl rescues the ambassador, and she saves the day, and everything is looking great for heroes. And then I'm trying my best to kind of recap and remember. Then it comes to the first real confrontation of Elastigirl and the screenslaver. I can't get over the name. And the visuals on it, whenever they fight, it's really okay. So the movie itself is darker than what you'd expect from Pixar movies, and they can get pretty dark. It's darker than most Pixar films, but strangely enough, the body count is actually either really low or close to none. I remember in the first Incredibles, a lot of people died in that movie. Not so much in the sequel. Anyway, in the first confrontation, and this is where I talk about building tension, whenever we actually see what the screenslaver looks like, the mood of the movie just changes. It just changes in tone into a much darker one, and I was completely hooked. I was totally intrigued because if the screenslaver, for all the kind of corniness to it, he became a legitimate threat and of course he was kind of giving his edgy speech about how we as a generation of millennials are always stuck to our screens and stuff like that. But it's whenever he starts giving the speech and then everything starts going awry, that's when the tone of the movie really changed, and that to me was very impressive, and it kept me hooked. And whenever she used the help of Evelyn, there's so much to get into. Whenever she used the help of Evelyn's technology, she tracks him down. Turns out it's a patsy. But that scene alone, whenever she's chasing him down and confronting him, is so well shot, so well choreographed. Sure, I think it's the proper word to use. Like, the way it was directed was so fantastic. It kept me on the edge of my seat, super excited. There was kind of a jump. There was kind of a thriller, kind of a horror vibe whenever she gets into his lair, which was very interesting. And then, as it goes on, the false one is captured. They go into a boat, and there's a boat because all the world leaders are going to sign a kind of an act to make superheroing legal again. And it's then that we get the reveal. And this is, to me, where I wouldn't say the movie tanked. It's where it kind of lowered, and it was a little disappointing. Overall, I loved it, just letting you know. But this is the part where I just went, Spoiler alert, Evelyn turns evil and puts on goggles that does mind control, which is how she tricked the pizza delivery guy to be the pawn in the screen. She's a screenslaver, pretty much. It was disappointing because you saw that coming a mile away. I did like how they used the red herring with the philanthropist, her brother. I forget his name at the moment, but having him there is the red herring because, billionaire, he's idealistic, and this is where the kind of problem resides. Super idealistic, and in the very beginning, they kind of give a brief backstory as to what happened to their parents. There was a break-in, and their father, both Evelyn and the brother, he loves superheroes. He donates to causes, he donates to superhero funds and whatnot. And so he has a private line to Gazer Beam and Pyro, a fire superhero. Now, if you remember the events of the first Incredibles, those two heroes were out of commission because they were killed by Syndrome's robots, right? So a break-in happens. Apparently, and they never show this, it's only been said that their mother told them to go to the panic room and call the police. He decided to rely on superheroes. Well, because they didn't, because they were dead, the robbers saw, their dad on the phone and shot and killed him. And then they also mentioned that their mother died within a few months just out of a broken heart. And that's why the son, the billionaire, wants to create, or trying to make superheroes legal again, because he believes that if the supers are here, then all the problems will go away. So Evelyn has just been revealed to be the bad guy. She ultimately wants to pretty much tarnish the image of superheroes entirely, and it goes with the theme of perception of the media, of the public, and superheroes themselves. So the climax is everybody gets together, there's a big fight, and there's so much to unpack, guys. Let me go ahead and go to plot B, because as you know, you already know how it's going to end. They save the day, Evelyn goes to jail. The side plot, the plot B, is Bob Parr, Mr. Incredible, taking on the role of a stay-at-home dad. And you kind of see him, of course, things are not going well. Then they start to get better because Jack starts to manifest his powers. And this is kind of perfect for Bob as a character because he's all about cultivating that power and trying to really get out there and make it okay to be a superhero. Whereas Helen is more about keeping her family safe. Both very understandable goals and ends and means and whatnot. What I really liked about it, again, is the tension that it builds. Because, I've seen plenty of I'm wearing a superhero shirt right now. I've seen plenty of superhero movies where it's kind of cookie cutter. You kind of know what to expect when things are happening. But in the first scene, whenever Elastigirl's on her first assignment, she uses her motorbike in very unique ways. So that the company, they give her a motorbike. Evelyn's the one who designed it. It splits in half, so she's able to stretch and use, and she rides both sides on the wall inside a tunnel on the train. Very fun stuff, very creative stuff. And it also shows off a bit of a Helen's character where she has to be more careful because she's not as invincible as Bob, as Mr. Incredible. So she has to be a lot more careful because she can get damaged a lot easier. But she's flexible, and that also means she's flexible in the field as far as mentally speaking goes. And again, when it came to the screen slaver, that scene was rife with tension. And it's only her going inside his lair and kind of stepping in, being really slow, but the way the sound effects were worked, the way the camera was shot, the lighting built up the tension. Like, oh man, you couldn't wait to see the confrontation. And then the ending is undercut by Evelyn's character. Now this is me going back to the point as to The Incredibles is about using practical and pragmatic ideas to push an ideal. Now, the red herring throughout the whole story was that the brother, the billionaire philanthropist, he seemed to be primed to be the bad guy, because we've seen this before. Where the billionaire, the rich guy, has the best intentions initially, but then it gets twisted at the end. Now, here is where Evelyn falls apart for me. Evelyn as a character, as a concept, is very interesting. A female villain who's really good with technology is able to lock onto screens and use that as a weapon against the masses. That's very interesting. But in relation to the story, her reasons for being evil are very weak. Because they don't ever have a conversation about their parents dying except for that one time. They talk about it, and the brother yells, "I disagree!" But we don't have to get into that. And that's kind of the only mention, they have. Now, they do get emotional whenever they talk about it, but that's all it's ever said. So, here's the problem with Evelyn is she is on the opposite thinking of her brother because she feels that humanity is getting weak because we rely too much on superheroes. This is me coming up with it. It's said, but it's never explored. To me, she blames the superheroes for not being there, which is why her parents died. They should have listened and went into the panic room, right? And where it falls apart is there's a scene where Helen and Evelyn are talking, and they're having a very, not the deepest, but an intelligent conversation. Evelyn is a very intelligent woman. Not just, she's not one of those tech savvy people who are like socially isolated, and because she's mature all around. She's mentally mature when it comes to socializing, even though she says she doesn't like it. She's still able to hold a conversation, an intelligent conversation. She's also she just seems way more mature than her brother, which is who you assume would be the villain. And that maturity doesn't cross over when she finally turns heel. Whenever she reveals her plot that she wants to make her entire plan is to make superheroes illegal again. Pretty much keep up the status quo. But she's a mature woman. It doesn't fit. Now I know this is my opinion, of course, and feel free to disagree. By all means, I welcome it. But it just wasn't believable enough to me that she would turn evil, because she seems like a well-adjusted and mature woman who, her and her brother run $1 billion, company. But it could. I mean, it's your parents dying. I'm starting to kind of justify it to myself even now, and having something that traumatic happen to you could also make even the most sound and reasonable people, do crazy things. It's just that I don't actually. You know what? I don't think her motivations are all that bad. I think they should have just kind of explored it a little more. Like there was, I'd say, a couple perfect opportunities when they were talking. When Helen and Evelyn were talking, it could have been a good time to kind of bring it up and kind of expand on it a little more, or maybe have a scene where the brother and the sister are talking and they kind of bring it up a little more. I think it was just ill-defined. And then a little bit of ill-defined are the characters of Dash and Violet. In the original Incredibles, they kind of had their own stories, but I like to think they kind of were allegories or allusions to kind of Bob's and Helen's feelings about superhuman society as a whole, whereas Dash, he wants to express himself, express his power, express who he is, and Bob encourages it while Helen stops it. So it's pretty much the superhero society and the government clashing there. With Violet, she just wants to be normal. That's her arc. She just wants to be a normal teenage girl, very much taking on her mother's side and living a normal life, just being a teenage girl. Unfortunately, in The Incredibles 2, she does mature. Violet does mature a bit. She's much more of a team player. She's much more of a strategist. Unfortunately, her entire arc is about her getting Tony to like her, and that's unfortunate, because she's a really interesting character. And as a teenager, she's rife with potential in storytelling of a teenage girl trying to fit in but has superpowers. But all it really boils down to is she has a crush on a boy, and the boy is mind wiped. Oh, he gets his mind wiped and forgets all about her. And with Dash, he doesn't really have much to do either. His biggest thing is like math, and that's about it. But I think the real standout to me was Jack Jack. And now we knew Jack Jack was going to play a role since the first Incredibles movie. And in this one, he gets to play around a bit, and I believe they said this in the director's commentary before, that Jack Jack kind of presents limitless potential. And this is really explored here in the sequel. Of course, it's played for comedic effect, and there's a scene. I'm usually not a fan of like baby characters doing funny things in movies. That's not my jam. But they did it well here. I actually liked it. I thought it was a fun scene. He fights a raccoon. And it also kind of, I think because it also kind of gives you a taste as to what his potential could possibly be. Because a raccoon attacked him, and he left without a single scar. And it builds him up as this really powerful character, truly, or at least one with limitless potential, where if it's harnessed right. Oh, and there's a really fun scene where they visit Edna Mode, and she babysits Jack Jack, but it also kind of looks like maybe if they continue the series, Edna could be some kind of mentor or role model to Jack Jack. They get along super well. They click. They have a really interesting line that I really like. What was it? Jack Jack is exciting, and I'm stimulating for him. And that sounds like a very much a mentor and teacher relationship right there. You want your prospect, your pupil, to be exciting. And as a student, you want your mentor to be stimulating to the mind. I thought that was a very interesting dynamic between Edna Mode and Jack Jack. And they kind of played with that a little. They played it for laughs for sure, but in the bigger context of the world, I feel like that could be potentially something. Another thing I want to bring up: they have all this advanced technology and no cell phones. It's not really that big a deal, in all honesty. Like, they still have old school cars, so I imagine cell phones aren't really all that important because they all use communicators. And whenever I first saw the first Incredibles, I always try to pinpoint like when exactly does this take place. But now, I realize that it's kind of a made-up time that mixes the 1950s space age aesthetic with future advanced, modern day, and kind of think of like the MCU kind of technology just clashed together. But nobody has any cell phones. I don't think cell phones would have affected the plot very much if they were introduced. So that's why I'm not making a big deal out of it. Overall, Evelyn's character is a little weird for me. I might have to watch it again, and it might change my mind. Because, I'm forgetting that something traumatic like your parents dying can affect you in a way that would seem unreasonable to your more logical side of thinking. So I might have to watch it again. I'm trying to think of anything else that I want to talk about other than the thick elephant in the room. Of course, it's Elastigirl herself, her appearance. And I think it's just kind of a consequence of the art style and the, again, pragmatic, means of it, in which they're supposed to look like comic book heroes, very pop art style. But, she also has 3 kids, is getting up in age, so of course she's going to have wider hips and just, yeah. That's kind of my thoughts on that. Of course she would look like that because she's an older woman, she has 3 kids, and it's a consequence of the art style where everyone is kind of exaggerated. Frozone is very lean, Mr. Incredible is very top-heavy with tiny feet, and of course Elastigirl is thick as a result of that. So, trying to think if there's anything else, but literally this is just me winging it. I didn't even have time to write any of this down. This was just kind of a spilling of my own thoughts of what I thought of the movie. Overall, I highly recommend watching it. Maybe you guys see something more in Evelyn that I'm missing. Maybe I missed a line or like a scene or whatever. I mean, I sat through the whole movie, but I feel like her motivation wasn't clear enough, at least for me. I might have to watch it again and kind of change my mind. But overall, very fantastic movie. It definitely lives up to the hype. It definitely deserves the accolades that it's getting. I highly recommend. I give it 4.5 Elastigirl butts out of 5. I don't know how I'm going to make that graphic, but I'll make it happen. Alright everyone, it's a late night. It's 12:35 a.m. I'm probably going to stay up a little bit longer to compile all of this. And also maybe do a writing stream. I guess I have to. But thank you for joining me again. My name is Gary Medina. Hello universe. It's nice to meet you.